Welcome back to another episode of Living LFTD with Brenton Ross. I have my man, Sean God. Why'd you look at my guns when I pointed them? You act like they were going to do something to you.
I looked at your fingers, but I'm always ready, dude.
Here we go. He's always ready. I got a little intro I wrote on you, and then we will kind of take things from there. Sean is a former professional baseball player, a former professional baseball coach, and he is now the director of operations at H5 Helicopters. I looked at our analytics the other day, and I think it was like 97% of subscribers right now are men. So for the 3% of women that are watching this, Shawnee is single and ready to mingle, baby. Hey. So I've been looking forward to this. We're going to have fun with this today. And I'm actually going to do something with you today towards the middle. I'm not going to give it away yet that we have not done yet. Today's focus, though, I've talked a little bit about this in the past. And it's not something I'm going to have to do every single time, but you just exemplify this really well. And I'm talking about ambition, but the difference between ambition and healthy ambition, because that's something similar you and I have been walking through in our life. We've been very ambitious people our whole life. But now what it looks like to transition to healthy ambition instead of just being ambition in itself. So that being said, have you always been an ambitious person, even as a kid?
It's actually funny you brought that up because this was about a year and a half ago. I remember the question came up. I was talking to somebody and they said, hey, you should just ask some people close to you. What's one word that describes you? And there was two words. I got asked a few people, my parents, a couple of my friends. And my mom actually said, she said ambitious.
This is perfect. So, yeah. So two things just happened. One, I was going to play the Set It Off song because that's his theme song. Second of all, we also have not had this conversation, so I didn't know that. So this is meant to be. This is meant to be. So as a kid, that ambition, you knew you wanted to play baseball. So is that where it was all like directed through? What did that look like?
Yeah, I'd say I was pretty fortunate in a sense. Like from the time I was about 10, 11 years old, I realized that my passion was baseball. I think a lot of kids have something like that, something they love. They want to be an actor, a football player, whatever. And so at that time, pretty much, about 10, 11 years old, every night before I'd go to bed, my mom would come in my room, say our nightly prayers. She'd leave, and then I would just add a little additional to the prayer saying, God, I want to be a professional baseball player. And I fell in love. I know I hit my first home run. I was always kind of like a smaller, skinnier kid growing up, but
me too.
The first home run I ever hit, I can think back to it. I remember it like it was yesterday, and I hit it, just didn't even feel the ball come off the bat. It was a state tournament, big game.
Flushed, baby.
And I've never ran so fast in my life as I did around those bases that day. And I think that was just imprinted on me at such a young age. And so that was just motivation to practice and, hit and do the workouts and stuff because I enjoyed it. I wanted to like recreate that feeling. So
you got a taste of it and you want more.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So as a kid, you're playing Little League. And then at that point, were you playing other sports too? Or did you know, like, this is what I want? I mean, you're saying a prayer that it's baseball. I was sleeping with a basketball on my bed. I wish it would have been a baseball.
Yeah.
A little bit more physically suited for baseball than basketball. Dumb. And I can remember just knowing, though, that's what I wanted. Were you the same way? Like, you knew it was baseball and that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, growing up, so being from Indiana, basketball is a big sport. So
absolutely.
I grew up playing basketball and baseball. Basketball is actually my first love. But then, we had a really good group of friends in the neighborhood, and there's probably 4, 5, 6 of us on any given day. And we just pretty much get home from school, eat a snack, go ride our bikes around the block, meet up, and then we would just play street hockey or ride bikes or play wiffle ball or football or whatever the season was. We just make up games.
That's the best.
And so I think like from that kind of we developed the competitiveness. We'd always make games out of it, pick teams. And then, through that, I got to be about 7th grade. I stopped playing basketball. My team lost every single game in basketball this one year. And I kind of was at the point where I realized I wanted to spend my time in the winter time, starting to like lift weights and do push-ups and hit, throw, because they had there's an indoor cage by my house.
You started lifting in 7th grade, huh?
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah, there's like
great.
once twice a week.
I would have done that.
Yeah, didn't really know what I was doing too much. We did have, I just go in the basement. We had like some little dumbbells and a barbell, and I'd just like make up workouts and look up stuff online. I had a Puerto Rican coach, baseball coach, when I was about that age, and he would just say, he's like, you need to do 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups every single night.
Good man.
And I did that for
push-ups.
Year
Sit-ups are great. Push-ups are severely underrated.
Yeah, and got a lot stronger.
Yeah, that's why you got those milkers today, but man, no bounce for your kid. Seriously though, like a lot of the guys that I'm working with, I'm like, if you want to just amplify the way your chest development, because everyone wants to bench, do the work at home outside of even what I'm having you do. Give me those push-ups. Let's start with 50 a night. Let's work up to 100. 100 is pretty healthy. That's great. Yep. But getting them in, like, it's a game changer. If you just do 100 push-ups to that point every single day, it'll make a big difference in your physique for sure. So that's good advice he gave you.
It's part of the routine. Yeah.
Middle school, 7th grade, you decide this is it. Dialed. Take us through what high school looks like from a baseball standpoint. You started to really hit your stride. I know a lot of this stuff because he's really close with me, but I want to know so they can understand like what that looks like, because I'm going to ask you some questions as we get farther into this, as far as like the mental process that you had, what tweaks you would make, different things you would learn to give advice to other people that are aspiring athletes, or even just specifically for baseball. So we'll get to that, but that's why I'm asking you such specific questions about it. So what did that look like? What was your mindset like for high school, and how did things play out from there to the point you start to get some real traction and get to go play ball?
Yeah, like I said, so that was it was my passion. Like that was, pretty much all I think about, in school, whatever. I can't wait for baseball practice afterwards. I was a pretty skinny kid, like undersized, like wiry.
How tall are you at this point? Because you're about the same height as me. What are you, 6'1", 6'2"?
6'2" right now.
With ambition to be more,
I always want to be 6. I thought 6'3" would be a good height.
They told me I was going to be 6'5". Based on all my measurements, everything, because I was already like 6 foot, 6'1" in 8th grade. And they kept telling me you'd be 6'5", 6'5". I only got another inch, and that was it. I was so pissed because I was trying to play basketball, and 6'2" was not going to get it done.
Yeah, it's not going to work. No. But I don't know. Like, I don't even know what I weighed freshman year, but I was pretty skinny.
I look sick. I mean, like sickly.
Yeah.
You could almost see my spine through my stomach. I was so skinny. It was brutal how skinny I was. You can still tell I got little dainty wrists. I got those little bitch wrists. As you can tell, I was that skinny kid.
Yeah. There was part of it like some, self-conscious, coaches, people making comments like, oh man, you need to gain weight. You're like, because I was like,
at least they're being honest with you
guys. Yeah. And so I would just do everything I could, like eat as much food as I could, because I knew you got to be big and strong to, have power and hit a ball hard, have endurance.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to pause on what you just said. So those coaches were making comments like that to you. And I said, that's good that they're at least being honest with you. But part of that, for some kids, they can take that as a big setback mentally. They get discouraged by it. You were strong enough to say, okay, I'm listening. I need to take the critical feedback and do something about it, because they know what they're talking about. But for a lot of people, it can crush that person to the point where, when I said earlier, were you always ambitious as a kid? And you said, yes. I think, and you said yourself as well, a lot of kids want to be, whatever you said, firefighter or astronaut or whatever you said. A lot of kids are very ambitious, but then as life goes on and they get disappointed and there's more setbacks, ultimately those setbacks and that discouragement diminishes their confidence, which then leads to them losing their ambitions. So how did you keep that from letting that happen?
I don't know if it was stubbornness or what exactly, but I felt it was always motivation. If somebody tells me I can't do something that I want to do,
I get that.
Like, who are you to tell me
buddy,
that I can't do this? Because I don't know if it was a belief thing or what, but I'd say like every night I pray, like I had it in my mind of what I wanted to be. And so even like going throughout high school, I was really like, I didn't have one single college offer. I just had a preferred walk-on spot. So like no money or anything, basically just a spot on the team to go to Ball State, but I had no scholarships at all. And even then, I still use that as motivation. That was just like, I come in,
my underdog.
And I kind of, over time, you kind of just become comfortable being in that position, because I always look at it like there's no pressure on me. Right. Nobody expects it.
You got nothing to lose. That's the person to fear.
And then when I do go out and it surprises everybody, then it just like, I don't know, it's satisfying because I know that like being a smaller guy too, you have to work and learn all the little nuances. And I would be just doing stuff for hours and hours and hours by myself, hitting and just making adjustments, trying like all these different things in my swing and trying to just do everything I could to maximize what I had.
Without getting too technical, was that swing plane, how you generated power from different way? Like what was that? What those tweaks look like?
I just knew that I liked the feeling of hitting the ball really hard and the sound that it makes when it comes off the bat. So everything I would do, I would just watch like big league hitters and I would kind of like role play. I'd test out like the Derek Jeter. I would try the Albert Pujols, the Barry Bonds, just all these.
Gary Sheffield.
Guys. Yep.
I loved that.
Griffey,
we used to do that. My brothers and I would always do that. We'd always emulate players in our batting stands. Exactly. My brothers had that same setup you did. I never had that with a group of friends because when I was at that age, we lived out in the middle of nowhere. And then by the time we lived in a neighborhood where there was a bunch of kids, I was a little bit past that age. But my brothers had that setup where they had like 10 kids at least, sometimes even more, that they would play baseball from they got up, basically have breakfast, go play, to the point one of the moms would yell at them to come home for lunch. Everybody went their own way. And then they were right back and they go play again. And it was like that day after day after day. And one of the kids ended up playing for the Rockies. I mean, it was great for him. And I was a little jealous of it. I would play some, but I was 3 years older. So when they got a little older, it was a little bit more fair, but it's, at one point it was too much. I was just ripping jacks off of
I could see that. Yeah. I feel good. And that's something too that I guess, so I give baseball hitting lessons, kind of on the side now, just, still, I'm not in professional baseball anymore, but I still like love the game and I like to be in some capacity and, working with kids all the way up to college and pro guys, something you see is more common out of guys that played pro is it was some sort of like unstructured play when they were growing up versus now something that has become a lot more common even in the last decade is just there's not as much just free play with friends, experimenting, having fun. It's become more of a business for youth sports, and there's a lot more emphasis on just go to these, they're hitting coach every week or a couple times a week, and it's much more. There's
like an established trajectory of things you're supposed to do as structure instead of before where it was like you're going through that developmental stage in a fun way, in a recreational way, and now you're saying they got to more so fit into the system at such a young age.
Yeah, and it definitely makes sense because I did have I was actually just thinking about this the other day. When I was in middle school, actually, there's this indoor batting cage close to my house. And my mom took me over there. It's called Champion Sports Complex. Took me over to this place. And basically I went in and I was like, hey, like, you guys need any help cleaning the floors, taking out the trash, washing the windows, anything.
That's cool.
So I can, come in here and hit. And so
that's awesome.
Like some of the best people, so generous. I was in there and basically they were like, yeah, how about you come in every Tuesday night for 4 hours, 5 to 9 p.m. and you're just going to pick up baseballs, vacuum the floor, take out trash, clean the bathrooms, just make that place spotless. And in turn, I got the chance to like go and hit and use the cages anytime I want, and I would get one free batting lesson a week.
That's awesome.
Looking back,
and you appreciated, valued it because you were having to, put in the work just to be able to be there.
Yeah.
Instead of taking it for granted, or just your parents are paying for it or whatever.
Yeah.
You paid your dues to be there at a young age, so you already had an appreciation for it. That's awesome.
Yeah, and so it's good to have a mix of like, because I was still playing with my friends and stuff and just having a good time. Sometimes people make the mistake of just everything is so structured. Like 8-year-old kid comes in for a lesson and their dad's already talking about getting him a college scholarship and everything because like becomes a job for the kid too early.
Do you agree or disagree that I think the magic formula would be the structure of the instruction? And so that way you're not not only creating bad habits, but utilizing bad habits for a long time you have to break. So you do have the structure, but yet there's still the recreation side that you're having fun with it. So that's like, you kind of merge the two worlds where while you're having fun and you're playing with your friends, you're doing it the right way.
I think it's a couple things. I think the parents actually play a huge, huge factor.
I'd agree with that.
I was fortunate. My parents were not overbearing. They never
Good.
pushed me on, I have to do this sport, I have to do that. They just basically, they said, if you're going to do tennis or basketball or whatever, great, do it. We're not going to push you into it. But if you do it, you're going to commit and finish the entire season out. There's no quitting halfway through. You're going to give it the absolute best that you can.
Yeah.
When the season ends, if you don't want to do it anymore, great. But yeah, baseball is fortunate because it was always something like I was the one begging them to take me to, go to the batting cages when I couldn't drive. And
you're hungry for it. Ambitious already. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I see parents that allow their kids to kind of go the direction that they want and then support them in that's important.
Right there. I put down the definition. I do this kind of depending on what we're talking about, if it's relative, but this one, Oxford's definition of ambition is a strong desire to do or achieve something, typically requiring determination and hard work. Everything that you're explaining right now exemplifies that to a T. And that's why I wanted this to be the focus. So you're going through that process. You're in high school now. You go to a walk-on spot. When do you really hit stride where it leads you to go to the minors?
I will say actually probably not until my junior year.
Okay.
I knew it was something I always wanted. I actually was fortunate and got to play quite a bit my freshman year. And then
even as a walk-on, that's great.
Yeah.
What position did you play in the field?
I know outfield, you're a great hitter. I usually play right, and then sophomore or junior and senior year I played center field.
But hitting was just that was always your strong suit.
Yeah, hitting, had a little bit of power. Doubles, had some home runs and some speed. So
that's right. We were looking at some of your stats yesterday downstairs in your office. You had those stolen base that game. That's right.
Yeah. So with that, probably actually I'll say about my junior year. My first 2 years, they were kind of rough. We lost. We had one of the worst records in college baseball. We lost almost 40 games both years. But then my junior year, we had a new coach come in, and this guy just completely turned the program around 180 degrees. Him and I, we still keep up to this day.
That's cool.
And yeah, we all just check in and stuff. But he was such a big influence on me of getting me to really actually believe in myself and develop confidence. And it's always a work in progress, I think, but he was one of the first coaches that I had that I felt like he cared. He really understood me. I would even just go in his office, sometimes during the week between class, and we just sit down and talk about life. We didn't even mention baseball. And that really freed me up and got me to really believe that I need to even set my sights even higher. So that was just
answer my next question. I was going to ask you, what was it before junior year that helped you turn that corner, turn that page that made you have a successful season?
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah.
It makes sense. You had somebody that really believed in you and invested in you as a person and not just how you fit into his program.
Yep. I guess I don't know, different relationship than and I had so many good coaches over the years too. This is not discrediting any of the others, but
what a blessing.
Yeah.
I can't say that.
The understanding.
I don't talk about it because I can't really talk about most of the coaching experience I had in a positive way. So the fact that you can, that's a blessing in itself.
Absolutely.
Even some of the younger guys that I work with, I have one kid that's just an absolute phenom, and you already know who I'm talking about, but I want to mention his name just out of respect. He's too young too. He's in 8th grade, which is crazy. But when we talk about the coaches and things like that, he's able to talk about it in a very positive way. And then he's also already had experiences with ones that aren't. And I do believe, I don't know how you would do it because it would be so complicated to do. If it's a rec league or something, there's not much you could do. I think that's just going to be on the parents. There's got to be, especially at a school, there's got to be a little bit more of a screening process or even evaluation process ongoing to see what kind of impact these men and women are making on these kids. Mm-hmm. Because if you've had a really bad experience with a coach, that's something that somebody can carry for the rest of their life, especially if they're a kid that had a dream in that sport and really legitimately felt like they had a shot. And then they had a coach that killed their ambition because it was an immature coach that was very broken, that was trying to live vicariously through these kids now or live out his dream because he never made it. And now he carries that into how he coaches these kids. That should never be allowed. It's terrible what it does to these kids. And some of these kids come out wearing a chip on their shoulder, angry, defeated, especially if they don't have a strong home life. They don't have parents that are affirming them in the right way and building them up. And that coach is going to fill that role to an extent. And then when they fill it in a negative way, it can have such a horrible impact.
Yeah, that's for sure. And like young kids, they're quite a bit more impressionable. And the older, I guess this is something I realized when I got older. You meet different people in your life, coaches, whoever. There's something about you'll learn to pick up on pretty quick which coaches have your best interest in mind.
Absolutely.
And then they're everywhere, college, pro ball, but then there's a lot of coaches too that have their own best interest in mind, and because it is their career, it's what they do. They have dreams, aspirations, so that in some ways.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's so many insecure coaches? Is it what I said earlier, that they just didn't make it themselves and now this is how they can still stay a part of the game? Or even they had a bad coach and now it's their turn to pay back or something. I just don't get it. Like it's so prevalent.
It's not contained in just coaching, I don't think. I think it goes to like, just that's how people are across the board. You know, there's some good ones, there's some bad ones.
Yeah. I just think like anything, like name a different role, a pastor or something. Like if you're going to be a pastor, that comes with a certain, as it should, responsibility as the way you live your life honoring to God. So if you're a coach, especially a coach of children, of teenagers, whatever, even men, I mean, they're looking to you for advice, as guidance, not just even in that sport. And it's not their job to now be your parent or your dad or your mom or whatever, but they need to accept what comes with that role and really strive to emulate what a healthy role model would be in that position.
And sometimes too, it's just by default, like, if it's youth sports too, they don't have many options.
Fair.
Somebody comes out.
Parent volunteering, whatever.
And yeah, they have their own issues and stuff from the past that, maybe they haven't worked through, they haven't gotten over it. Maybe they're trying to still in some way hold on to that dream, that they feel like they got, and then just, everybody has good intentions, but then just unknowingly some stuff I feel like people haven't worked through that can end up coming out on kids without them even knowing. Like I know, like
I can subscribe to that. I'll give them that grace that sometimes it's not even something they realize that they're doing. But if it's brought to their attention, they need to have the maturity and the self-awareness to be able to step into changing for the sake of those
absolutely, because it's leadership, and it's very much, it's a role where I look at it as like you're serving them. You're kind of, I don't know, you're there to help other people grow. Yeah. And it's even similar to like what you do with the training stuff, or teachers. It's very similar to teaching. You're helping them, like creating situations and environments where they can grow, they can level up. And it obviously with sports, but it's a kind of like a microcosm of a bigger picture of like what's taking place.
You're exactly right.
So yeah, I guess that's kind of how I look at the whole coaching dynamic.
How did it end up going from Ball State to the minors? Take us through that. And then I want to talk a little bit about your baseball career. And then we've already talked about coaching, but you end up being a coach. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of what we're talking about was what made you a good coach. So let's talk through, because I want you to tell me two stories when we get to it. So what I normally do is I put people on the spot on this stuff. You're still kind of on the spot. So I'm going to let you talk through how you get to the minors, what the minors was like. But two of the things I want to ask you to tell me. One, you alluded to that moment when you were in minor leagues and you hit that home run and you wanted more of that. You got that taste of that. If I remember right, there was a time you told me that there was a specific moment, even when you were playing farther along in your career, that it was like a moment you'll never forget. And then, so I want to know that story. And then I want a funny story, because that's another part that's so great about a lot of the sports, but especially baseball. You're in the clubhouse with all the guys. You spend a lot of time in that clubhouse or on the buses and all that. And I know you got stories for days. So I want you to give me one funny one after the highlight one. So how did we get to the minors? What that process look like? What kind of looks were you getting? How'd that play out?
Going into the minor leagues, or, about my junior year, I started getting some attention from scouts, and they're sending me questionnaires and coming to my apartment to do like an interview, kind of getting that
had to feel good.
The mental makeup, psychological, trying to figure out, because that's something they put a lot of emphasis in that too, the mental side of things. And went through my junior year, thought I was going to get drafted maybe late rounds just because I was talking to some scouts, but ended up going undrafted. That once again kind of just was like another one of those like, and I'm watching the draft and seeing some guys get picked up that I can feel like I can run circles around these dudes.
Yeah.
And so it's just another time for me, just like, all right, I'm committing, I'm doubling down on, you know, everything that I'm doing, and I'm like my decision-making process. And it wasn't like, I wouldn't necessarily so far as call myself obsessive, but it would basically, my decision-making process would be, is this going to help me get closer to being a professional baseball player, or is it going to take me away from it? And so,
and that's probably
it was pretty easy to make
on
decisions.
And off the field with your decision.
Yeah.
How you're spending your time, habits, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You're hanging out with.
Every season, when the season ends, you play your last game of the year, however far you get. You know, there's some guys on the team where, you know, they're the seniors. You get to see them and you look at them and they're bawling their eyes out because they know that it's the last time they're going to actually get to play meaningful baseball in their life. I remember, this was even way back to my freshman year of high school. I got called up to varsity at the end of the year. These big, tough, strong senior dudes that I'm just admiring, you know, we play our last game, we lose. And I'm watching these dudes cry their eyes out. And I mean, I'm starting tearing up too, because I looked at them, and in that moment I realized that they're done. Maybe they're playing some slow pitch beer league softball or something, but they're not, you know, they're going to the real world. And that, specifically that, I was like, I do not want that to be me, you know, a few years from now. And every single end of the season, you know, I always look for that. I watch for the guys that, because that's a different, you know, you see what they're realizing, you see their reaction, and that's a tough time. We all go through it. I went through it when I got released. I think I cried for like 30 minutes because I knew that, you know, I wasn't going to make it to the big leagues.
Huge chapter of your life just closed too.
Yeah.
They weren't ready to even shut the book on yet too. I get that.
Exactly. So yeah, I think that's, kind of just like, senior year comes around, had a pretty good senior year. Okay. Talking to scouts, they're all, you know, hey, you know, we're senior sign, you know, you're signed for, you know, the way the draft and money and everything structured. A lot of seniors sign between the 6th and the 10th round because there's a bunch of rules I won't get into, but they can sign them for a discounted value.
Really?
A bunch of scouts were like, hey, we're seeing you going, you know, 6th round, 7th round, 8th round. And so I'm getting excited. And the draft rolls around, day 2, watching it. And I'm just waiting, you know, sitting by the phone. We're watching it. We got it pulled up online.
What'd that feel like?
I would say actually, it was kind of like a bit of like almost like I was kind of on edge, like, because I just almost like I wanted the relief of just, you know, see my name on there next to a major league team. Like this is just, you know, a day I've thought about for such a long time. So anyways, the day 2 of the draft goes. I don't get picked in the first 10 rounds. And there's guys that are going where I'm just like, I'm scratching my head because like how. So day 3 of the draft comes and I'm just like, at that point I'm over. I'm not even paying attention. And I know I'll get picked at some point, but I was, not even watching the draft, and then ended up, getting picked in the 22nd round by the Braves. They meant to pick me. This shows you how much they don't really care about the late round draft picks like that. They meant to pick me in the 21st round, but they actually picked a left-handed high school pitcher with the last name of Godfrey in the 21st round.
On accident instead of you?
They picked the wrong Godfrey.
Wow.
The round before. I didn't know this story until like a couple years later in spring training.
The moral of the story is to be the right Godfrey in the draft.
Yeah. Just like,
bring in the lefty.
How did you make a mistake like that? Like, that's how important my pick is to you guys. But
I could see.
I just laughed at it.
My name is Jacob McLaughlin, and I'm the founder of New to Medical Device Sales. Medical device sales is the selling of medical equipment to hospitals, surgeons. They're actually in the surgeries, and the average rep's going to make around $177,000. And what we've been able to do is help people break in about 8 weeks at around $100,000 starting out in the industry. It usually is 5 to 7 interviews, 6 to 12 weeks long in the interview process, and they go up against thousands of people. But that's because you are going to be working with some of the smartest human beings, such as surgeons. You're going to make over 6 figures. You get your car paid for, all your gas paid for, and all your travel paid for. We've been able to help over 2,000 people do this in the last 2 years. Not only do we help people break in to make a difference and change other people's lives, they also get to change their lives. If you're interested in helping people and you're interested in financially becoming free, we can definitely help you. And I think you should check out New to Medical Device Sales, our podcast, while you can also click the link where you guys can learn more about what we do at New to Medical Device Sales. I absolutely love Brenton. I thank him so much for what he's doing for all of you, and I hope you guys keep enjoying the episode.
And I'm just like a man with his hair on fire. Yeah, you know, I'm in pro ball.
Yeah,
it's the coolest thing, and I'm just like, all right, same thing. I'm gonna go show these people what I got that don't think that I can be on this field with these guys. And had a really good first season. Moved up several levels in my first half season. And went home, and then it's like there's an adjustment period too to pro ball from college. It's obviously it's your job. You're playing professional baseball. It's every single day. You get to the field around noon, practice, workout, and stuff all day. Game time's usually at 6 or 7 p.m. Eat some food, shower, get back to your hotel or the place that you're staying, you know, at like midnight, 1 o'clock, and then do it all again the next day. So that's pretty much, you do that for about 6 or 7 straight months. And then you have 5 months for the off season to where, you know, you're on your own. You go, like, you say, hey, we'll see you in spring training. You know, you got to be ready to go when you show up. So there's an adjustment period for sure for that, of, you know, those off seasons, professional baseball, not around a team, don't really have any structure. In some ways it feels, it's like a lonely time of life, I would say, because there was kind of no structure or anything for it. Just here, do what you got to do. So there was definitely like some challenges with that. And then obviously baseball, kind of professionally, it can turn into, you know, guys on your team, like you're on your team, but everybody wants to be up here on the big league team. So you're competing against them, and the dynamic is definitely a little bit different. Yeah,
that's interesting when you're competing with some of your closest friends for the same spots to an extent. You might be different positions, but there's only so many spots. Sure.
So, but overall, I mean, it was pretty much the same.
Give me a funny story.
I'm going to be kind of limited on what I can say probably here on the podcast.
Okay, do your thing.
All right. I guess the first one that comes to mind, this was in pro ball. There was a team that I was on. We had a really, really fun group. It was just, you know, we're hanging out, having fun all day, playing, you know, when we're in the clubhouse waiting for the game, or, you know, playing Mario Kart and cards and just goof around. Then we hang out, you know, afterwards as a team, like just all day, every day for months, with just good group of dudes. We're having a good time. That team, like, guys like to party a little bit. And we had this one pitcher. He was just this lights out sidearm, very unique, funky kind of guy, like personality, like everybody loved him. So we had him, and he was good friends with this guy who was our closer. And this closer, he was a character too. Like he would chug a monster or shotgun a monster before he would come into close, smash the can on his head, and come in the game.
Every single time?
Yeah. And so the story, basically, before the game one day, our starting pitcher, he was starting, and our closer was like, dude, I'm not feeling good today. He's like, he just had a long, rough night the night before. He's like, I don't want to pitch today. I need you to go complete game, please. I will suck your toes after the game.
Oh, come
you throw a complete game. And so our starting pitcher's like,
bet.
All right, I'm on. Like, let's go. So our starting pitcher goes, throws a shutout, complete game. We get in the clubhouse, and everybody's just in there. And
buddy, I don't know what's weirder, the fact that that's the bet the guy put on the table, or the fact that motivated your pitcher to have the best game of his life.
Yeah, I have a video. I can show it to you later. We have it on.
I'm good.
But this dude's walking around barefooted in the clubhouse, dirty floor, just
he's ready to collect.
Disgusting. And our closer, he's like sitting on the couch. He's like, all right, it's time. And instead of a monster at this point, he just chugs a beer real quick, hits the guy's toe.
No.
puts it in his mouth, and we just all go crazy.
I'm thinking pitching with a hangover is going to be a far less worse than sucking some dirty toes with a hangover.
Man, he did it. I'll still give him a heart. Like a month ago, I brought that up too.
Oh my, yeah. I don't think he's ever going to live that one down. That is very funny. So how does it transition from you playing to coaching? You alluded to the moment that you got cut. When did that take place? And then how that transitioned to you being a coach?
Yeah. So I got released 2017. Ended up actually playing. So that was from affiliated ball. And then I actually played a couple years of indie ball, independent baseball.
Is that where you met Cause?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Played on the same team there.
Yeah.
And so did that for a couple years. And then once I was done, that was 2018 was my last season playing. I knew like halfway through the year, it's time for like that chapter of my life's closed. I could, try to hang on and avoid the real world.
Yeah.
But it was time.
Yeah.
There's more outside of life than baseball. So I finished up. I was back home living with my parents because that's what you do in the off season. You're there for 3 months, 4 months, and you're out. Like I was doing some hitting lessons, and my main thing I was doing is I was teaching English to Chinese kids online.
I know this.
And like wake up at like 4 a.m. and it was like an after school program thing for them. And it's called VIP Kids. So I had like a little. How
did you get into that? See, this is why I love this. I never knew. How did you get into that?
So one of I think it was like my mom's relatives, friends or somebody was doing it kind of as just like a part-time thing. And they were paying like $20 an hour. So I just was like, I sent them my little email address and they got back to me and they said they needed male teachers. They wanted more male teachers.
You speak English? You're in.
Yeah. So they ran me through a little training course on how to, I was basically teaching like letters and sounds, like how to like sound out a letter and enunciate and very basic, because I didn't speak any Chinese.
Hooked on phonics.
That's what it was. What I learned was to communicate with these kids, like how important body language was. And how easily it is to just put in all these filler words and phrases. I had to limit what I said, be very short, simple, concise, be very like positive. And I'm usually a pretty even-keeled person.
Yes, you are.
And don't tend to show a ton of emotion. So that kind of like got me out of my comfort shell. So I was doing that for a little bit. And then my guy who was my agent when I played, actually, we had kept up and have a good relationship, and he reached out to me and was like, hey man, like, I know, you're out of baseball now, but, he sent me this job opening, in coaching, and I looked at it and it was with the team. I knew they were doing a lot of really cool, like progressive stuff with analytics, and they have like the top player development system in baseball. So I was very attracted to obviously like the doing side of it, but I was also attracted to like some of the newer technology and the ways that they're training with all the stuff that you can measure now. So yeah, I applied for that, went through a few interviews, and I ended up getting that. And so that's kind of how I got into coaching.
That was the Houston Astros, right?
Yeah.
How long were you there?
3 years.
Cool. Couple questions I have for you. And I'm doing this, sorry to be annoying. My forearm is sitting here twitching and spasming while I'm talking to you. If you could give advice to yourself, going through that whole process from, call it middle school, when you had that moment, you're like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a professional baseball player. As you go through the progression of all the steps that you just talked us through, what advice first would you give yourself? And if it's the same that you would give someone else, great. And I want it to be specifically for yourself for baseball, because now I want you to look at your ambition and how you could even now, 2 steps removed, look back and say, here's how my ambition at that point could even have been more so of a healthy ambition of how I could have handled it. What advice would you give yourself? And then what advice would you give other aspiring athletes, whether it's baseball or any sport that they're trying to make a career?
Yeah, I think basically baseball is the advice that I would give is baseball is, it's what I do, but it's not who I am. It's not my identity. I'll be the first to say I got pretty tied up, especially more so later years, college, pro ball, when you got scoreboards and every single statistic and number that you've done is you're looking at that 4 times, 5 times a day every time you go up to bat.
Yeah.
I got to a point for sure where I was more or less like I was trying to impress the coaches, impress the scouts, and I wasn't able to really enjoy it as much as I should have, and also probably didn't really like I did the best that I could. I don't have any regrets or shoulda, woulda, coulda.
How did it affect your personal life and social life when you weren't, call it, having a top season, or you didn't feel like you were trending? Because I had a guy that's actually not out yet. I think it'll be out this weekend. I had another guest, Cam, and he was talking about when baseball was good, his social life was good. When baseball was down, it would kill his confidence to the point he had horrible social anxiety. Did you experience anything like that? I know and I loved what you said, not finding your identity in the fact that you're going to be a baseball player. That's huge. I hope every aspiring, not even just athlete, every person, I don't care if you're a young person, hopefully you get it when you're young. I wish I would have got it when I was young because it saves you a lot of hard work down the road. But I think there's even a lot of old people, like if it's a random guy I meet on the golf course or something, they want to tell you what they did, how much money they have, what they drove to the course, what they're going to shoot that day, because they're still insecure at 70. So there's a lot of us that still need to work on that no matter what chapter of life we're in. It's just, you're that much better off if you get it sooner than later, but it's better late than never. Yeah. So what did that look like for you?
I think I was probably a little bit irritable, maybe so, but one thing I was conscious and aware of this for the most part is because you will see that people were riding the emotional roller coaster. You see the guy and when he hit 2 home runs today, he's just super excited,
riding that high, sure.
And then when he strikes out 4 times the next day, you can't even talk to him. He won't even give you the time of day. Like I never wanted to be like that because I would still respect other people and do my best to leave what I, did for the day at the field and have some sort of a life outside of baseball.
Did your parents give you that guidance at that age to know to do that? Where'd that come from? Because that's pretty rare.
They were always for like the older I get, the more I can appreciate, them and the upbringing that I had. But they were always kind of just like, they were there. They weren't, if I didn't want to talk about the game after the game, I didn't have to. If I did, great. And they were kind of just like there just as they love me either way, supportive, foundation. And so that, I think that was very helpful in that, like, they didn't love me more if, my batting average was high and love me less if, I was,
I think there's even a lot of parents that I'll give them grace, just like you gave some of the coaches earlier, that they don't even realize that they're doing it. The child's performance dictates how they treat the child. It's easier to give them praise when they're doing something good than to find a way to still give them praise when they're not doing anything spectacular.
Yeah.
And to build that identity up and who they are, regardless of they're playing a sport or they're, standing out at school in their grades or whatever that looks like. Like being able to just allow them to know that because they're God's child and they're loved, that they're valued and they have value and they always will. And I can see the huge difference that makes in a child, anyone's life. Yeah.
Because they don't have to be searching in the world for their value.
Exactly.
Like
or proving.
It's already set.
Yeah. You don't have to prove anything. All right. So I'm going to do something with you that I have not done with anyone else. I'm going to let you just pick a random topic, any topic that you want to talk about. We're just going to have a discussion. And then I'm going to bring things back to how I want to finish things off. I'm going to put you on the spot.
I guess, all right, so this is going to be just out of left field, and I guess it's just what came to mind because this is something that I had actually just heard pretty recently for the first time, and it's like a concept that I don't know, I guess just like when I heard it, it was kind of new to me.
What you got?
So, Americans, like talking about American people.
America.
Yeah. How we think, a lot of us, we think in a similar way. And this is from people a lot smarter than me, but I just heard it and I was like, that's interesting. So I want to learn more about it. So he's talking about Americans, and it's more of just like people in the West in general operate kind of under the mindset of a much more individualistic mindset, which is, if you go like I think Plato, his philosophy, he was one of the first people that took this stance of that, like of us thinking from a standpoint of all being a bunch of individuals. Like we're at
the center of each of our own little bubbles.
Yeah.
Our own little universe.
And you can think under that umbrella and you try to, if you put yourself at the center of things and you try to control everything and try to overthink everything and basically be God, like being in that umbrella of thought process itself, that's kind of that's your reality, I guess. And then there's other, I guess, mindsets that you can think of. This was even actually just like last night, same guy was like talking a little bit more about this, and I got to ask him some more questions, but not saying like one is necessarily better than the other. People have their differences and opinions, but the other one is kind of like this is the first way I've heard it put this way, but I don't even remember if he had a name for it, but basically like instead of just an individualistic mindset, there's God, and then everybody else is slaves, basically. Meaning,
man, I gave you the stage and you're going deep, son.
Well,
all right.
That's the first thing that popped in my head.
All right.
Everybody's a slave to something, whether it's trying to please people, whether it's social media addiction, alcohol, drugs, attention.
Yeah.
List X, fill in the blank.
Yeah. Some of those things can be good things on the list until that you become a slave to it. Sure.
Yeah. And it can kind of become your master. And something that is cool is that we have a choice, which, you can take a lot of stuff away from somebody, but them having a choice, like their free will, we can choose, what or who we want to serve. And sometimes we go through life blindly. It's easy to do it. I'm sure in this podcast, I'm probably saying and like 1,000 times.
You want to throw a count up on there? You want to throw an count up on there? Hey, you want to kill your friends? Play a drinking game called Drink Every Time Sean says
Probably be in trouble.
I can say that. He's one of my best friends. All right, keep going. So what are we doing with this topic? What do you want to talk about?
I don't know. That was just like, I guess like what was on my mind. Like, and I think it's such a cool thing. I guess stuff like that when you kind of get outside of your own typical thought processes that you have on a day-to-day basis. I think I don't know, it's interesting and it helps. I don't know. I'm not like giving advice, but
no, you're not. What you're identifying is something that's actually very prevalent. And I completely agree that unfortunately there's a lot of factors that have amplified or progressed this to the extent of where it is now today. I think if you took 100 Americans, and even by the state, you could even go, especially by the city, certain areas. And you picked 100 up and you use it as a sample, or 1,000, whatever. And then you picked up 1,000 people out of whatever you want to pick, some Asian country or Africa or I don't know. But the amount of narcissists that would be in that sample group in America, I bet you there's substantially more than there would be. Because you name some of them, social media, society, advertising, everything is pointed at, you need this to be this, you need this to feel this, you're the man, you're the woman, no one tells you what to do, this is America, this is what it was founded on. And that's only partly true. It was founded on, so you'd have religious freedom, the freedom to make a wage, bear arms, all those different things without getting too specific and deep into it. But it has morphed into widespread narcissism to an extent. And it's like, it's praised almost. Like, yes. It's like if you're like the big tough dude and you did it all yourself, you're hyper in the pit. Like, oh yeah, you're going to get me going on the lone wolf mentality that just disgusts me. And the reason why it gets me so worked up is because I bought into it. And I see how much time I wasted, how many people I hurt, including myself, when I bought into that mentality. You see so much on social media, go dark for 6 months, come back, whether you're in shape or you're making more money, and prove everybody wrong. And it's like, okay, you came back in better shape and you have more money, but
still
what did that
insecure?
Exactly. You're going to be just as insecure because it might have filled a void just briefly, but it's not going to fix things. And oftentimes it gets worse. Because in that 6 months of darkness, your depression, your anxiety, it intensified by that isolation. We were built and meant to live in community. I had an opportunity one time to have a discussion. Josh Ward was on this show 3 or 4 episodes ago, if that. And he grew up in Africa. And he grew up taking care of orphan children and people that have much, 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 much different lifestyles than we experience here. And he explained that a big difference that he sees is, especially when people come there and they volunteer, if they're there long enough, they actually have a harder time adjusting when they come back to America after a year than when they go there. And the reason why is he says that there it's a relational connection between people, and here it's transactional. And going from somewhere where someone actually cares about you as a person and connects with you as a person to then back into an environment where it's all about how they can use you or get something out of you, and it becomes transactional. And I'm not saying all of us as Americans are that way. I'm trying really hard not to be that way. And there's all millions and millions of people that are also trying not to be that way. I wish there were more. There needs to be more because it's so prevalent the other direction. I'm not saying we're all that way. I don't like when people lump everybody into one thing, because there's a lot of people trying really hard not to be that way, not to fit that stereotype. But unfortunately, as a whole, there is a lot. And he describes that, and I've experienced it when he brought actually some of the kids from that village over to my last facility. And I got to spend time with them, and they were happier than me. They had more joy than me. And I listened to some of their stories. Man, it makes me want to cry now, just thinking back through them, because the things that they would describe to me, the conditions that they lived in, but things that they still found joy in or happiness. Like one of the kids, I like playing with my car, and I'm expecting whatever, a Hot Wheel or some kind of model car or something. It was put together with paper clips, and he loved it. Loved it. Made him happy. One of the little girls says, I love help cleaning the house. The house is a single room with a dirt floor. And their perspective was so much different. It wasn't this accumulation addiction that so many of us has fallen into, that we're the center of our little universe. And the more we can build ourselves up, the higher we can build our accolades, the more we can accumulate, the more we have, the better off we're going to be. And it's rampant. And am I going to get political right now? Okay, I am, but I'm not. So immigration, it's a delicate subject. And the reason why is for the very reason that so many people get it wrong, I believe. They stop forgetting that they're humans. You put yourself in this American bubble, and you start looking at other humans that are just like you, created by God, as almost like something different than yourself, because they're from somewhere else. They're going to impede your lifestyle, whether it's going to affect inflation or job availability or crime or whatever. And some of those statistics are true. But at the end of the day, we need to remember they're humans. And they have as much value as we do. Now, the only thing I want to say that I guess could be sort of political, I do believe in proper immigration. And the reason why I believe in that instead of just an open border is because we've had conversations like this, and I think you know where I'm going to go with this, is that proper immigration is actually a way to love the immigrant well. If you use the example, like I'm going to go to, let's say you're in middle school and you're going to a new big high school, or you're in high school going to a big university. You go to orientation. They walk you through the hallways. They tell you where your classes are. They give you a student ID. They tell you the norm. They show you where your locker is. They may even give you a map, because on that first day you're nervous. When you come into this country, and especially if you've come in from a third world country or something that's substantially different than the way of life here, you don't know how to operate in our society. This society has a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of beautiful, amazing things about America. But if you don't know how to live in this system, it's also a very intense and dangerous environment that often can lead you into a very desperate scenario that leads to crime or whatever you got to do to survive. You could end up being in a worse condition here than even what you were in before you left. And so I believe in proper immigration from the stance that it protects what our country stands for, the freedoms that are there. It helps mitigate some of the ways that improper immigration affects the economy and things that I alluded to earlier. But more so, and most importantly, in my opinion, it's how you love those people and prepare those people to be successful in their new life here. I do think we should allow people into this country and give them freedoms and opportunity, regardless of where they're from. You know, criminal backgrounds and things like that are going to be very case specific. And I think that there needs to be regulation and stuff like that, especially when it comes to like firearms rights and things like that. But as far as letting people in, yeah, they should be able to come in, but they need to go through the proper process so that way that they're prepared. It's not just to protect ourselves, it's to prepare them and love them well so that they have an opportunity to actually have a good life when they get here. So all that being said, based on the point you're making, I feel like it's very easy for us, unfortunately, to have this
Us versus them.
Exactly. And that's wrong. We should all be able to love each other despite our ethnicities or economic status or differences, and find a way to not just create an environment that's conducive for each person to succeed, but actually show kindness to each other. Josh has this term that he uses, and I'm trying to think of it right now, so I'm talking a little bit slower. Sometimes I'll use that as a way to use like a few little extra moments to think of something I can't think of. And it's this term that he uses that's in their native language. And basically they say it when they see each other. And it basically, they're saying, I see you, like human to human. Not just like I physically see you, but like I see you and recognize you and your value as another human just like me.
I think there's a Hawaiian saying that's similar to that too. Somebody was telling me when they embrace, I think it's more than just like it's some little more casual, but not like quite romantic. They almost like come together, like I don't know if it's like touching foreheads or what, but they say something and it's like same breath. Mm-hmm. Like we're breathing the same air. Mm-hmm. And yeah,
isn't it Avatar where they say, I see you too?
Maybe.
I think so. I think it is. But I know they do say that, or Josh is talking about, but I just thought of a moment in Avatar where I swear they said that too. That also leads into when you were kind of going back to the American stereotypes of being very self-centered. A lot of people today suffer with some form of, you said they're a slave to something. So a lot of people could be a slave to an addiction or identity or success or whatever that looks like to try to compensate or heal, to
give validation.
Yeah, no, but to cover up some type of wound or insecurity that they haven't been, whether it was their childhood or something that's happened, that's a coach hurt, whatever, that they then are a slave to something else because they'd rather be a slave to that makes them feel better than to the wound itself and actually addressing that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so important that even though it's uncomfortable, that we have to be willing to do that work and not buy into the more of me and more stuff for me is going to make me more happy. Even people like Tony Robbins, they'll talk about one of the quickest ways to get out of your depression is to stop focusing on yourself, what you haven't done, what you don't have, and start focusing on how you can serve and benefit others. It'll take you out of that self-centered, poor me mindset of that chip on your shoulder at all times of I'm always the last to get picked. I'm always the one that's unlucky. I'm always like when you're talking about earlier, when you're in the draft or in that scenario. And it's like, I'm seeing myself get passed up by people that I feel like I can run circles around. I feel like we can all relate to that in some way in different environments, whether it's school or even in your family, in your own household.
And I think Jordan Peterson said it is there's no, I think it's like no clinical difference between thinking about yourself and being miserable. That's from a psychologist, like whatever sense. His accolades are, but
he's got a few.
Yeah.
So that ties me into how I want to now transition back to what we were talking about, healthy ambition. Okay. So I've even got the privilege, which has been awesome over the last, what are we knowing?
About a year.
Almost, is it really almost a year now? Mm-hmm. Oh my God. That's crazy. What does healthy ambition look like to you now? What's changed? What drives you and why?
As far as what drives me, it's changed over the years. It's working towards or continuing to just learn to grow and have a relationship and experience better relationship with God, and then doing that through other people as well. So whether it's people I'm close with or people that I interact with, it's using the energy that I've been given to share that. And also continue to grow in that relationship and have a better understanding. It's changed from trying to be the best in the world at what I do. I tried probably to do that for 15, 20 years. That was my approach, I guess, with baseball. And I've been very fortunate in that I've, in a sense, gotten to live out my childhood dream. I've gotten to do a lot of stuff. I've got to travel a lot of places and have a lot of experiences and meet a lot of different types of people and Even just like living here in Scottsdale, I come from the Midwest. Originally, this is a beautiful place with the mountains, and it's great. And then I don't know, like I think some people go through this. Everybody talks about, what you got to do to be successful, but not many people talk about, well, once you get whatever your definition of success is, then what? And like you're saying earlier, it's cool. It's great for a while. You feel good, and you're proud of yourself, all the hard work that you've put in to get or attain something that you've been trying to do for a long time. But then it fades too. And so as far as like ambition, we should do the best that we can with our jobs, with our relationships. But going back to like the being a slave thing, we're not solely being a slave to like my job, or there's a bigger purpose that I guess that I would say that it goes beyond like it's something that we're serving. It's some people look at it, they have different ways of describing it, but for me, it's like all the different stuff I believed in my life, it's following Christ and getting to just build that relationship and then love more like he has loved. And I don't know. That's
I love it. So let's identify even a little nuance in there. So the difference between like you become a slave to a drug or alcohol or money or a relationship, oftentimes in the beginning, it doesn't feel like slavery. It feels pretty good. But then after time, when it's got its hooks in you, you do become a slave to it, and it's not necessarily even a good thing. Might not even feel as good as it used to, and you have to have it more often to get that hit or to get that fix, whatever. And now you are a slave to something that you need, and you're miserable in between your fixes. The difference with God is that he gives us free will. And when we choose to be a slave, and some people don't even like that term, but I'm okay with it. I will willingly be a slave to God. He sent his son to die for me. I'm more than willing to dedicate my life to him now. I will be a slave, but it's by choice. He doesn't command me.
I think that term maybe carries some connotations, but it's very different than I think your average, what's looked up to.
Yeah. When I was reading through the Old Testament, it was referring to when a slave would be released, but yet they didn't want to leave their master. And then they were there by choice. And I think they would like mark their ear or something because now they were there on their own accord. I feel like it's a privilege to be a slave to Christ because I can leave at any moment. He's not forcing me. He extended his hand and said, I love you. It's whether you want to take my hand or not. And the differences in this scenario than most other ones, almost any other one I can even think of, is that the more and more I'm a slave to him, the better I am in every other arena of my life. Like so you're saying like what drives your ambition to healthy ambition for a life centered around Christ is because it just doesn't make you a good Christian because you know a bunch of shit about the Bible or about, how to be a good person and all that. Like it makes you a better friend, a better eventually husband, father, a better employee, a better, leader. Every category, when God is at the foundation of what and why you're doing it, you end up doing it better. And that's what's so cool about it is because some of the other things we talk about, you become a slave to it, it actually ends up usually being detrimental to your ability to be.
And I would actually argue maybe not in some situations.
Like what?
Say, for example, like, I don't know, just a broad guy's working his job and he is just busting it. This is his, his thing, and he's sacrificed. He doesn't have any family relationship. That's just his number one thing. And if he then switches it up and starts to follow God, and he realizes like, wow, I've been killing myself, which is not healthy. It's not serving how I should serve. Maybe from a worldly perspective, maybe his performance does diminish in that job and he gets fired, but then that like leads him to a step closer to where, it's more aligned with where he should be.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to then fall into using God as basically a performance enhancer.
Yeah.
That you're going to make more money. It's prosperity gospel.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out because you're right. There is a point when you really choose to be a slave to God, to serve God with everything. You give him your heart, your focus, your money. You're like, God, none of it's mine. I'm just a steward of what you put me in charge of. you are going to face that fork in the road a lot of times where it's like, okay, doing things God's way or doing the world's way. There's the world's economy, God's economy. You feel like a fish swimming upstream against everybody else that's doing it the world's way. And yeah, you're right. Sometimes your ability to make money or to keep score in the world's economy, sometimes it does diminish. But that's why you've got to be rooted by choice, and your love for God is why it's more important to you. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's a good point. You know, man, I've got to watch you with so many different people, and a lot of people will say, oh, that person's great with people, and you're good with people. But some people are good with people because they're good at working people. They're good at playing off what the person said and telling them what they like to hear, or they're very charismatic, articulate, they have infectious personality. It makes them good with people. You have a lot of those attributes, but the reason why you're good with people is because I see how much you genuinely care about people. You listen when they're speaking. You're not working them or working a conversation. You listen when someone's speaking because you actually care about what they have to say. And because you care about what they have to say, it ends up leading into a really good conversation that they feel like they connect with you. And that's rare today. So many people, you can tell when you're having a conversation with them, they're not even listening to what you're saying. They're just thinking in their head of what they're going to say next. And they probably don't even know most of the things that you said in that conversation. That's become very prevalent. And it's refreshing to watch you, how you interact with people, because you are so genuine in how you interact with people, because it comes from a place that you actually care about the person. Yeah. Mitch has such a good time about how even keel you are. And it's even funny to make jokes. He's just like, he'll come in and he's super amped up about something political or whatever. And you're just, and it's refreshing too. You've met Dustin that I play golf with.
Yep.
And he was talking about one of his friends that every time you're around him, it's not that they're fake positive, because that's annoying. I don't like being around that at all. You can always tell when it's artificial fake positivity. But when you're around someone that they're just at peace with themselves, they're thankful for life in general, they are present in the moment, they care about what you have to say, they're positive in the sense of how their outlook is at life, and you're that way. He was describing one of his friends, and he's that way too. I got to look at him and be like, you're that way too, but you're that way. You're definitely that way. So what does legacy mean to you? How would you define legacy, and what would you want your legacy to be?
Honestly, that's not even a question that I really think about, because 100 years from now, nobody's going to remember me.
Mm-hmm. I like that point you bring up. Hermosi brings that point up a lot, because so many people get caught up. We talked a little bit about this in my episode with when Jeff was here. Yauk. Got to get that right. I was saying yuck for a while. It's Yauk.
Last name?
Yeah. And this paralysis that comes from the fear of how everybody else is going to view them. If they fail, how other people are going to view them. If they do fail, how it could affect their social status or current social circles that they're not willing to jeopardize failing. Because then even if they're not happy with where they are right now, it could make them go backwards in some way or whatever. And so I do like the power that comes from thinking 100 years from now or a generation down the road, whatever, the decision I'm making on a lot of these things, no one's ever going to remember. I mean, even huge names that have done amazing things still, like, most people don't remember or can't recollect off the cuff. And so there's power in that, to let go of that fear or anxiety of what everybody else is going to think. So that way it gives you the ability just to go after what you want, what makes, again, now we're kind of getting back to the self-centeredness, but saying it in a healthy way, removing the fear and allowing you to utilize God, the gifts God has given you, to go after the purpose you feel like he's designed for you, to enjoy the things you enjoy. And eradicating that fear is a major, major step in the ability to step into doing that. So I love that part of it. But the people that do know you, your family, your future family, friends, people that you interact in this business, what does legacy mean to you in terms with them? And it can even be bigger than that if you want to. If you wanted people, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with someone saying, as long as it's not, I want them to remember me before God, but I want people to remember me. I want to make my mark on this world that they remember me for thousands of years. I don't think there's anything wrong with that if it comes from a healthy place, healthy ambition. So I want to give you freedom there, that whatever that looks like to you, that's okay, as long as it comes from the right place.
I would hope, like, if it's like my funeral, people were saying the eulogy, or it's 100 years from now. In a sense, I could give some people like hope or inspire them, because they saw that I wasn't afraid to face my fears. I wasn't afraid to go after something that I felt like I needed to go after. And I think I've had a lot of people, just role models and people throughout my life, that have I feel like empowered me, to inspire me to go, step out, where it's a little bit scary. But like when you do that type of thing, it is scary. Change is scary. When you get out of your comfort zone, you try something new, you go to a class, you move somewhere new, you go to a new friend group, like whatever, anything like that. It's so uncomfortable at first. But then like if you do that enough times, like you start to realize that, you know what, I'm actually like, I'm okay with myself. I throw myself in the deep end and I can actually, I don't know how, but
I thought it was so cool when you made yourself take that acting class, even though you have no ambitions to be an actor or anything like that. But just to put yourself out of your comfort zone, but also to stop taking yourself so seriously about how other people view you. Yeah. I thought that when you told me you were doing that, dude, I was like, man, that's so badass. That's so cool that you're willing to go put yourself in such a vulnerable, anxiety producing scenario and just be like, it's okay. I got to get used to this. It's okay. I got to stop taking myself so seriously to the point that I just let how everybody else views me or how I think they view me dictate my actions, thoughts, and emotions. That was a major step into that. And I watched you take that step.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of us, legacy comes out of how you remember, but think about how you remember things. How often is it when a certain smell brings back a memory, familiar place, how it made you feel? I think how someone made you feel plays a huge part in how you remember them.
I see what you mean.
And I think because of how intentional and genuine you are with each person you interact with, a lot of people are going to remember you very well because of how you made them feel.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, like you feel seen,
You're good at that.
Yeah.
You made me feel really good.
It's good, man. I'm happy.
You could have a billboard right over here, Scottsdale 101. You could say anything you want on it, but your name's got to be signed below it. Everybody knows it's yours. What's on that billboard? It can be whatever you want. Pictures, phrase, anything you want. I know what Mitch would want on there right now. Your phone number and a helicopter, charter flights. That would be but good. It's not his billboard, it's yours.
For business, for sure. I'm trying to think what if I want to go like a funny direction, or I haven't had I've had a thought in my mind before. It would be cool to just be on a billboard just for the sake of it. Doesn't even have to say anything. Just be like, because like every billboard you see, you don't see one of just like Brenton's face up there smiling. It'd just be like a funny joke almost.
Yeah.
Kinda, something like that.
Yeah. But your face and it just says set it off next.
Set it off. Yeah. Like keep it tight, baby.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. It'd be like enough to like make people like confused a little bit. Yeah. Think about it, but there'd be some humor in it too, I guess.
I love your answer, because every time I ask somebody this question, they feel this pressure that they've got to have like the perfect saying that makes an impact on the whole world or everybody that sees it or whatever. That's a refreshing way to look at it.
It's not our job. Like, I don't know, stuff, I have a sense like stuff will work out however it's supposed to. Like, even if it doesn't look like it or seem like it or feel like it, like this time that we have right here, right now, it's a very short amount of time. And you talk about legacy. It is a short amount of time, and it seems like it's tough, and we all have our stuff. We wake up in the morning and got the thoughts and everything going through our heads, and the struggles and the aches and pains. We're going to be there till the day that we die, sometimes more, sometimes less, but you even zoom out to like eternity, and it's depending on what people believe happens after they die, but I like to think, we go to heaven, and this will just literally seem like a blink of an eye right now, so I don't know if that minimizes things a little bit, but
no, it doesn't. What do you do on the morning when you do wake up feeling like that? What gets you to get out of bed and go face the day?
Some of it is, for a long time in my life, I would use like a variation of I guess it comes back to identity, but I'd use like for my passwords, I'd use on all computers, phones, accounts, it would be some variation of the form of champion. I think that goes back to,
You heard it, people get in his stuff.
yeah, well, you don't know what else is in the passwords. But anyways,
This grinder app.
it was basically, yeah, it's just like, that was the identity, being the best in the world at something, trying to do that. But switching that, because that's more of like a performance based kind of thing. It's more of like, almost like I see myself more as like, we're all warriors in a sense. It's like, you get up, it's just like, you got whatever, if it's a voice, some days the voice is louder than the others. I heard the other day, some like 20% of people don't have an inner monologue going on.
Really?
Yeah.
20% of people
30%.
don't?
That's, yeah.
What's their secret?
I think that's just how some people are wired. It's because they like process stuff.
So that mean they don't really have a conscious either? What would that look like? Is there any correlation there?
I have no idea.
Interesting.
It could be completely off. That's what I heard. That was actually on a.
So I think for a lot of us, sometimes the voices in our head are louder than the voices, our actual voice.
Yeah. But I guess with those, it's just like, you can't hide from it. You got to choose your suck. Like, you're going to either, you could lay in bed and the voice is going to talk to you all day, or you could get up and you could go brush your teeth. And then,
right.
like, and then over time too, you kind of, like when I was talking earlier about mindset and like perspective, like you get better at just learning how to laugh at like these thoughts that we have. Like 90% of thoughts we have come in our head every day is the same as the day before. It seems like it's this big issue that you got to fix, control, and just realizing that you can just like, oh, like I could be worried about this, or I could just not think about it, which easier said than done. Like they're always going to come. Like,
yeah, it's not easy.
It's a daily continuous thing. There's like, it's just looking to try to be the warrior, not to try to like limit and create this little safe bubble where there's no friction. Like that's like I say, it's ignorant. It's just, I wouldn't say that's a wise approach to have. But like, if we make ourselves like a warrior, like we do hard stuff, we go lift weights, and you could train, or you read a book to try to like challenge yourself, or you go, I don't know, go to do something, like go perform a dance for people or piano song or whatever, like challenge yourself so that you can grow. Like you build the confidence and know that
that's right.
Whatever challenge comes, like, you'll figure it out. You'll find a way to get through it. People have done a lot of hard stuff in life. And
I think it's a very healthy way to develop a healthy self-respect and self-love. Yeah, you're really hitting something there that I think that is so important for all of us to do. And that is to not be complacent about that inner voice, I guess, for the 80% of us that do have it. Mine's very loud. And so I have to be very intentional about training that inner voice to fortify me. I wrote the other day, I said, you are your toughest opponent, whether you realize it or not. You're constantly battling against yourself, that inner voice. You'll either build yourself up or you'll break yourself down. It's up to you. Your thoughts, your words, your actions are your tools. How will you use them? So those actions, you just really hit on something that I think I want to finish with. You teed that up perfectly, is constantly choosing comfort leads to misery. Facing something that you think is going to be miserable ends up leading to you feeling comfortable. You feel good about the fact that you faced it. But if you just constantly keep choosing the easy road, you don't feel good about it. It's like some of the guys when we're in the gym on Saturday or something, and at the end they'll make jokes about like what I have us do or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, if you just kind of think of what would be the worst possible thing to do right now, you're probably on the right track. But that's why I do it. That's why I do it. Thanks for doing this with me today.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me.
Is there anything else you want to say?
This will be very short with this. This came to mind actually when you were just talking about that, and things in a sense, I wouldn't say clicked for me, but it started to change my perspective. Or maybe this just gave me more of a context to explain what changed my perspective. But when I started coaching, there was we blend like sports performance with the weight room stuff, with the sports psychologist, and then with the actual like training. And there's a concept that we hit on and we put a lot of emphasis on when it came to learning and growth and development for the players, and doing that at a very quick rate. Was a concept of neuroplasticity, which I didn't know what that meant until I got in there. But basically what it means is, and this is a science, you can look at this different ways, but a scientific perspective, what they know about the brain is that whenever you do something, whether you say something, any action, you raise your arm, anything, your brain has like billions, the trillions, these neurons, and they all communicate with each other. And when you have a thought or raise your arm up like this, they all fire in a specific sequence to get that to happen. And when they fire, they basically have these tunnels that connect them all. Not all of them are connected, but every time that you do something, like an action, a habit, you say, like, it fires that same sequence. And if you fire that more, these tunnels that carry these little messenger messages or whatever, it's a process, it's called myelination, and they get a little bit thicker each time. And each time you do that, they get a little bit thicker, they get a little bit faster, it becomes a little bit more hardwired in your system. The takeaway for me from that is basically it's the process of learning. It's how we're designed to learn. I mean, you talk about your inner voice and it being loud. It's something that it comes back to free will. Like, we do have a choice. We can wake up and I can choose. I have that choice. That's amazing that we even are able to have a choice. And then when you see that, whether you're training like somebody else through coaching or even in yourself, if it's a behavior or something that you're trying to change, just even knowing that you have the possibility of doing that and growing, like, that's encouraging in and of itself. And then when you can start to go through life and you become a different version of yourself and a different version of yourself, and something interests you and you grow in that category, it's a really, really cool thing, because like, we're capable of so much. And I think a lot of people just may not know that, or it's a limiting, they limit themselves because they don't even know what they're capable of, that they have something that's a system.
Or maybe they're unwilling to go through the period of time it takes to do exactly what you just said, because it takes repetition, time of repetition to create those passageways, that they're not willing to invest that time to make the change, the lasting change of that rewiring. Man, you've been sandbagging us this whole time. That was beautiful. Way to finish that at the end. I don't even think you said once during that whole thing. You nailed that, boy.
Good. I'm working.
All right. That being said, do me a favor, go to pushupsforpoverty.org, the orphan village that we talked a little bit about earlier in this episode. And if you want to go look at the one with Josh Ward, I think the name of that episode was called Empathy. We are raising money to feed those children. Every penny goes to those children. If that was not the case, we would not be involved. So do me a favor, go check that out. Their story about how they feed the kids, educate the kids, love the kids. Like, it's such an incredible thing that they're doing over there. So take a minute out of your day, go check that out. Remember, the passwords to all of Sean's stuff is somewhat of a variation of champion.
Used to be.
So get in there. Good evening and good night.